Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Radha Shyam Sundar, Radha Shyam Sundar Hare. Jaya Krishna Balaram, Krishna Balaram, Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram. Jaya Gauranika, Gauranika, Jaya Gauranika, Gauranika. Shrimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Paramahansa Parivrajikacharya Ashtotar Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Giridhar Harshivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Nuramanveti Dham Ki Jai. Tulasi Maharani Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Nitai Gau Premanande Hari Hari Bo Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru Gauranga. Shri Shri Radhesham Ki Jai. So this is Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, Knowledge of the Absolute, text number 27. Ichadvesha samuthena dvandva mohena bharata sarva bhutani sammoham sargayanti parantapa. O sign of Bharata, O conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into illusion, bewildered by dualities arisen from desire and hate. The real constitutional position of the living entity is that of subordination to the Supreme Lord, who is pure knowledge. When one is deluded into separation from this pure knowledge, he becomes controlled by illusory energy and cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The illusory energy is manifested in the duality of desire and hate. Due to desire and hate, the ignorant person wants to become one with the Supreme Lord and envies Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Pure devotees who are not deluded or contaminated by desire and hate can understand that Lord Sri Krishna appears by his internal potencies. But those who are deluded by duality and nescience think that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is created by material energies. This is their misfortune. Such deluded persons symptomatically dwell in dualities of dishonor and honor, misery and happiness, woman or man, good and bad, pleasure and pain, etc., thinking, this is my wife, this is my house, I am the master of this house, I am the husband of this wife. These are the dualities of delusion. Those who are so deluded by dualities are completely foolish and therefore cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So our regular class with Jayadvaita Maharaj on Wednesday nights will not take place tonight. There is a program in Gainesville with Devamrita Maharaj, and Jayadvaita Maharaj will be going there for that program.
This morning's class here will be given by Mother Lakshmi Moni. We are happy to have her back. Here are the devotees who have assisted their Guru in dressing the deities today. Sri Sri Radhe Shyam are dressed by Nitai Priya, Chota Radhe Shyam by Mother Guru Prasad, Sri Sri Krishna Balaram, Mother Jai Gauri, Chota Krishna Balaram by Mother Prema Manjari, Sri Sri Gaur Nitai, Mother Devaki, Chota Gaur Nitai by Mother Gandharvika, and the Gurus and Lord Nishingadev by Krishna Kripa Moy Prabhu.
So one thing I wanted I didn't bring. Saraswati Sri Sriman, His Divine Grace of Hare Charanaravinda Bhakti Vedanta Goswami, Srila Prabhupada Ki. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Drivaja Kachacha Asto Saraswati Sri Sriman, His Divine Grace of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami, Srila Prabhupada Ki. Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki. Prem Shri Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Rasa Gaura Bhakti Vrinda Ki. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki. Shri Navadvitam Ki. Shri Ganga Mai Ki. Jamuna Mai Ki. Shrimati Tulsi Maharani Ki. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Sri Prabhupada, Namam Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prasad, Namaste Saraswati Devi, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, the 10th canto, the 39th chapter, and we're reading a lot of verses. So, we're reading from text 46 all the way through the end of the chapter, which is text 57. So it's actually 11 verses. And I think probably the best thing to do is, I don't know what the best thing to do is. What do you think the best thing to do is? So really a lot of verses. So maybe we'll just chant one line, back and forth as we go through all the verses. We don't have to have people chanting the verses, and then, or maybe we can just, I guess we'll do that. So, starting with text 46 rather, the verses are combined together into small groups in the Bhagavatam itself. Tasyat sangye ganashamam Pita kursheya pasanam Purusham chaturbhujam shantam Padma patranu ekshanam Charu pasanavadanam Charu hasa nirikshanam Subrunasam charu karnam Sukopalarunadaram Palamba pivara bhujam Tungam sorastalashriyam Kambu kantam nimna nabhim Yilimat palavodaram. Translation. Akrura then saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead lying peacefully on the lap of Lord Anantashesha. The complexion of that Supreme Person was like a dark blue cloud. He wore yellow garments and had 4 arms and reddish lotus petal eyes. His face looked attractive and cheerful, with its smiling, endearing glance and lovely eyebrows, its raised nose and finely formed ears, and its beautiful cheeks and reddish lips. The Lord's broad shoulders and expansive chest were beautiful, and his arms long and stout. His neck resembled a conch shell. His navel was deep, and his abdomen bore lines like those on a banyan leaf. Text 49 through 50. Brihat kati tata shani, Karaburu dvayan vitam, Charu januvigam charu, Janga jugala samyutam, Tunga guparuna nakra, Rata didhi tibir vitam, Navangulyan gushta dalar, Vilasat pada pankajam. He had large loins and hips, thighs like an elephant's trunk, and shapely knees and shanks. His raised ankles reflected the brilliant effulgence emanating from the nails of his petal-like toes, which beautified his lotus feet. Sumahara Manivrata, Kirita Katakangadai, Kati Sutra Brahma Sutra, Haranupura Kundalai, Brajamanam Padmakaram, Sankachakra Gadadaram, Srivatsa Vakshasam Brajat, Kashtubham Vanamalinam, adorned with a helmet, bracelets, and armlets, which were all bedecked with many priceless jewels, and also with a belt, a sacred thread, necklaces, ankle bells, and earrings. The Lord shone with dazzling effulgence. In one hand he held a lotus flower, in the others a conch shell, disc, and club. Gracing his chest were the Srivatsa mark, the brilliant Kaustubha gem, and a flower garland. Sunandananda Pramukhai, Prasadhai Sanakadivi, Sureshar Brahmarudradyar, Naravis Chadvijotamai, Parada Narada Vasu, Pramukhar Bhagavatamai, Suchamanam Pratakpavai, Vachobir Amalatmadi, Shriya Pushcha Girakantya, Kirtya Tushye Yorjaya, Vijaya Vijaya Shakcha, Mayaya Cha Nisheditam. Encircling the Lord and worshiping him were Nanda, Sunanda, and his other personal attendants, Shanaka and the other Kumaras, Brahma, Rudra, and other chief demigods, the 9 chief Brahmanas, and the best of the saintly devotees, headed by Prahlad, Narada, and Upariyachara Vasu. Each of these great personalities was worshiping the Lord by chanting sanctified words of praise in his own unique mood. Also in attendance were the Lord's principal internal potencies, Shri, Pushti, Gir, Kanti, Kirti, Tushti, Ila, and Urja, as were his material potencies, Vidya, Avidya, and Maya, and his internal pleasure potency, Shakti, purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains the Lord's potencies mentioned in these verses. Shri is the potency of wealth, Pushti, that of strength, Gir, the Lord's knowledge, Kanti, beauty, Kirti, fame, Tushti, renunciation. These are the Lord's 6 opulences. Ila is his Bhu Shakti, also known as Sadhani, and his internal potency, of whom the element earth is an expansion. Urja is his internal potency for performing pastimes. She expands as the Tulsi plant in this world. Vidya and Avidya, knowledge and ignorance, are external potencies who cause the living entities liberation and bondage, respectively. Shakti is his internal pleasure potency, Ladini, and Maya is an internal potency who is the basis of Vidya and Avidya. The word Cha implies the presence of the Lord's marginal energy, the Jiva Shakti, who was subordinate to Maya. Lord Vishnu was being served by all these personified potencies. And the last 2 verses, Vilokya Subrishim Krito Bhakya Paramayayuta Rishyad Tanuruho Bhava Pariklinat Malochana Gira Gadadaya Stausit Sattvam Alambya Sattvata Pranamya Murudnava Hita Pitanjali Putakshanai. As the great devotee Akrura beheld all this, he became extremely pleased and felt enthused with transcendental devotion. His intense ecstasy caused his bodily hairs to stand on end and tears to flow from his eyes, drenching his entire body. Somehow managing to steady himself, Akrura bowed his head to the ground. Then he joined his palms in supplication, and in a voice choked with emotion, very slowly and attentively, he began to pray. Thus end the purports of the humble servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, to the 10th canto, 39th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Akrura's Vision. Om Ganat Mirandasya Ganan Gana Shavakaya Chakshuram Notam Jayam Tismai Shri Guruvain Mahamukam Purajirachalam Pambam Mangayate Girim Yat Kripatam Hamdande Shri Guru Bhintam Paramanam Shri. So many verses beautifully describing a vision which is Lord Vishnu lying on the bed of Ananta Shesha. And we read here that Lord Krishna appeared, or Lord Vishnu appeared with all his potencies and all his, even his gatekeepers, Nanda and Sunanda are listed as 2 of the 8 gatekeepers in the spiritual world of Vaikuntha. And all the other devotees and worshippers of Krishna in different capacities, all those who serve him as he works in different capacities in the material and spiritual world. They're all assembled there, and Akrura is seeing this amazing vision. And it's described a little earlier that he was so shocked when he looked and he saw first Krishna and Balaram, and then he saw the Anantashesh, and then he saw Vishnu, and he went back and he saw Krishna and Balaram sitting in the chariot, and he was thinking, what's going on here? But then he became absorbed in that meditation. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in the purports to these verses, one point he makes that particularly struck me was that Akrura is seeing Krishna just according to his mood, specifically according to the mantra that he chanted. And when he was in the Vrindavan, because of the association of Nanda and Jasoda and all the residents of Vrindavan, especially the gopis, and the mood of Vrindavan, he was able to see Krishna and Balaram as two young cowherd boys. But that wasn't the way he really usually saw them. Usually he saw them in his meditation as Anantashesha and Vishnu, as described in these verses. But he got kind of a temporary benediction to be able to see them in this other form when he was in Vrindavan because of the association. And now he was heading back to Mathura. And so as he was heading back to Mathura, his own vision of God, his own vision of Krishna and Balaram, his own relationship with Krishna and Balaram, as he was meditating on regularly in his own worship, which was occurring daily, became manifest before him. And he was very, very pleased and happy to see that form. So meditating on that and looking through the Bhagavatam, and also I did some reading in the Laghu Bhagavatamrita, Rupa Goswami's Laghu, and the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. And this is one of Krishna's kindnesses. Krishna has many kindnesses. He's very kind to his devotees in all ways because he sees them, we're all parts of him. He's all of our Father, and he's our well-wisher. So he's always trying to give us exactly what we need or what we want. He tries to give us what we want. Sometimes we want more than our right, so we don't quite get what we want. But in some form, he's always moving us along. And we should understand that the devotees that see Krishna in whatever form they see him, they're very satisfied with that. We tend to impose upon the Lord, or the way the Lord should be seen, our own, I wanted to find this one quote that I had. Our own levels of good and bad. This is a quote from Rupa Goswami. However, but they who do not know the truth and who think in terms of the higher and lower things of this material world are not understood. You are like a rope mistaken for a snake. So for somebody who, if we bring into the various incarnations of Krishna, or the various manifestations of Krishna, our own conceptions of higher and lower that come from this material world, then we're really not able to understand Krishna at all. So if you look at Brihad Bhagavatamrita and Gopakumar's progression through the various levels of the material and spiritual worlds, going through Vaikuntha, then going to Dwarka, and then he knew in his heart that he was looking for a cowherd boy, that somehow Krishna was going to appear to him in a way, because of the mantra he was chanting, that Krishna, he knew he would recognize his Lord when he saw him. And he saw many other forms of the Lord. He saw Mahavishnu, for one thing, and he saw even Krishna in Dwarka. And even Krishna in Dwarka, when Krishna saw Gopakumar was dressed like a cowherd boy. And actually, in some places that Gopakumar went, people tried to convince him that he should change his clothes, that, what are you doing here in Vaikuntha? You don't even have a crown on. You look like a schlep. Your clothes are dirty, they're little stained from the dust of the cows, and you're carrying a buffalo horn, and you got a bandana on your head, and here you are in Vaikuntha. You need a crown, and let us get you some proper attire. But Gopakumar wasn't interested. And even in Dwarka, when he went to Dwarka, they gave him the same thing. You need some silks, you need a nicer turban, some jewels, But he wasn't interested because he was in his heart. He knew that his relationship with his Lord was manifest in a certain way. And he was looking for that relationship. And so although he appreciated and he got great pleasure in seeing the different forms of the Lord that he saw and interacting with those different forms of the Lord that he came in contact, he was never really satisfied until he saw that cowherd boy Krishna, that he had that loving relationship with in Govardhan, because that's where he was coming from, Govardhan. And he was in that mood, in that rasa of that relationship with Krishna as a cowherd boy in Govardhan, on Govardhan Hill, playing with the other boys. And when he went to Vaikuntha, finally went to Goloka Vrindavan, and he saw Krishna and Balaram and all the cowherd boys, he just knew this was Krishna, this was my Krishna. And he went running to Krishna, and Krishna went running to him. And they embraced each other, and they fell on the ground unconscious, and actually some of the residents of Vrindavan got a little nervous, even angry. What's this? This guy touches Krishna, and then Krishna falls unconscious on the floor. Lord Balaram, he understood what was going on. And of course, everyone understood eventually. But Gopakumar didn't lament that he wasn't a gopi. He didn't think, oh shucks, I went through all this, and now I'm Goloka, and I'm just a cowherd boy. I didn't make it to the highest rasa, Madhurya, I blew it. And Akrura here also is coming in contact with Vishnu, and he's perfectly satisfied in that rasa. That's his relationship, his eternal relationship. And he's eternally satisfied in that relationship. He's not hankering after something else. He's not lamenting that he didn't get something else. He's just completely overwhelmed in ecstasy. His hairs are standing on end. His tears are falling from his eyes. He's bewildered what to even do. Finally, he figures it out. I better hit the floor. And he bows down. But he's satisfied, completely satisfied, because there's no tinge of that material evaluation that we're so good at, right? Because when we hear something is first class, we think that's where I go, first class. That's me. I'm in the first class. So whatever's first class, everything else must be last class. I think sometime before, I don't know how many of you heard, but I had an experience, and in America, this is actually all over the world, it's very prevalent in India too, that second class just won't do. If you come in second class, even if you get the silver medal or whatever, it's just not good enough. And I saw this brief interaction with the Olympic Games once at my son's house, and I don't remember anymore who it was. It was France and somebody, and maybe Italy or something, I don't know. Anyway, France lost. I mean, they got second. They came in second. And somebody else got the gold medal. They got the silver second, I guess, silver second. And they were being monitored on a camera that was roaming in the arena, and they didn't know it. They didn't know they were on film. So, they all lined up and they got their medals, and the French didn't take it very well. So the guy shoved the thing in his pocket and then walked away, and a little bit later threw it on the floor and stepped on it. Now, this was on television, but he didn't know it was on television. So, meanwhile, the other people who won, I think it was Italy, they were, trying to embrace everybody, going over to the other team, trying to be good sports, giving them a hug. And they pushed them away. Their attitude was, get out of my face. I don't want to see your winning, smiling face. So this is an attitude which comes from material contamination. It comes from the material world. And if we bring it with us anywhere near the spiritual world, then we close the door to being able to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his relationship with the devotees. The gopis, they used to envy the bamboo because the bamboo made it into being a flute, and that flute got to be on Krishna's lips all the time. And they were lamenting, wait a minute, these lips, we want these lips. And what are they doing on that flute? And, you know, so actually one would think, well, bamboo, shanta, you know, they're not very exalted, but in the spiritual world, it doesn't work like that. And even in the material world, Krishna doesn't see like that. Prabhupada made that statement in Vrindavan many years ago in a letter, in a statement. He said that to Krishna, the person dressing the black and white marble deities and the person washing the black and white marble floor are the same. So we hear that being the pujari is the highest, and it's wonderful because you get to serve Krishna directly. But in Krishna's eyes, the person who's sincerely washing that black and white marble floor and the person who's dressing that black and white marble Krishna, if they're seeing their service as service to the Supreme Lord, then Krishna sees that service. And he doesn't say, well, this is higher and this is lower. Prabhupada talked about the woman in Radha Damodar who used to go to the Jamuna every day and carry the water every day for the bathing of the deity. And how exalted she was that even in an assembly of Mahants, they were encouraged to move out of the way so that she could walk through by her just standing there. Because they could recognize her service, her devotion. Her devotion was recognized by the Supreme Lord. And looking further and understanding Krishna's relationship with the devotees, I found in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 3rd canto, the 9th chapter, the 11th verse, that Krishna reciprocates with every devotee the way that devotee thinks of him, the way the devotee sees of him. The verse is, "Oh my Lord, your devotees can see you through the ears by the process of bona fide hearing, and thus their hearts become cleansed, and you take your seat there. You are so merciful to your devotees that you manifest yourself in the particular eternal form of transcendence in which they always think of you." So whatever form we think of Krishna, we see of Krishna, Krishna will manifest in that form for us, for our pleasure, because he's so kind. He will come in that form just so that we can reciprocate with him and we can be satisfied in seeing him in that way. And that's what I saw in these verses, that Akrura was seeing Krishna just the way he wanted to see him. He had been in Vrindavan, right? He had been in Vrindavan with the gopis and the gopas and the mothers and the fathers and all the higher rasas. But now he was seeing Krishna in this dasharas, which was his ras, his mantra, his bhav, his relationship with Krishna was in that relationship, and he was totally satisfied with that relationship. And for me, it was a very profound thing. Immediately when I read these verses several weeks ago, this was the one thing that stood out in my mind. And in the verse even, it describes that all these people that were praising Mahavishnu, who was lying on Anantashesha, they were praising him according to their own mood. So whatever mood they had in relation to the Supreme Lord, they were reciprocating with Krishna in that mood, and Krishna was reciprocating with them in that mood. He had a particular relationship with each one of them. And later on, in a little while, we're going to read about how Krishna, he entered the assembly of that Kamsa had designed, the arena where the wrestling match was to take place. And as he entered into that arena, and it was Krishna and Balaram, they were each holding a tusk of the elephant. They were sprinkled with drops of perspiration and blood, And they were dressed up, right? They had these new duds that they got from the washerman, these beautiful clothes that had been tailored directly for them. They got all the finest cloth. They had beautiful garlands given to them by the flower seller. They had sandalwood from Kubja. They were beautiful. They were decked out. And yet when they walked in, different people saw them differently. Everybody saw them according to how they saw them in their life. Some people even saw them in a ghastly way, as cruel death, as impending danger. It's described, I have it written here, the wrestlers, they saw them as a lightning bolt, and in the mood of fury. The men saw him as the best of males, and they saw him in the mood or the rasa of wonder. The women saw him as Cupid, and they were immediately attracted to him with a conjugal flavor. The cowherd men who had come from Vrindavan, they thought, he's our relative. He's my niece, he's my nephew, he's my whatever. And they saw him in laughter. They thought he was really cute, or, they appreciated him in that way. The impious rulers that were there, all the friends of Kamsa, they thought him as a chastizer. They thought something's going to come to an end right here. And they saw him in the mood of chivalry. And his parents, they saw him as their child, their little boy. And they saw him in the mood of mercy. The king of the Bojas, Kamsa, he saw him as death. And he was terrorized, right? He had lost already night's sleep. This is described very carefully that in the Krishna book that Prabhupada, when he describes that Krishna, he came home after, making a little bit of dent in some of Kamsa's plans. And he went home and he was very comfortable and he took a nice meal and he went to sleep. Not so for Kamsa. Kamsa had trouble sleeping that night. And he had all kinds of horrible dreams. He looked at his head, himself in the mirror, he had no head, and there were holes in his shadow, and he was hearing bad omens. He was a mess, So you can imagine when he came into this wrestling arena, he was the big man on campus, at least in his eyes and the eyes of his followers. And he stood up on the dais, and he was greeted with all kinds of regalia, but in his heart, he was scared. He was completely a nervous wreck. And he knew that he was going to die. He knew it. He saw so many omens. He thought, no matter what, I did that big elephant, and he took him down, and he ripped out his tusk, and that big bow, he broke it in half, and he killed all the... There's no way I'm going to live through this. So he saw him as terror. He was totally scared. And some of his other people who were less intelligent because they were serving him, the demoniac, they saw him as the universal form, full, that description, kala, the crushed on the teeth, etc. They saw him ghastliness. And the yogis, they saw him as the absolute truth, and they were very peaceful. And the Vrishnis, they saw him as their supreme worshipable deity, and they greeted him with a mood of love and devotion. So everybody in that arena saw Krishna differently, but they all saw Krishna. And he related to each of them accordingly and ultimately gave them exactly what they deserved, what they were meant to get. And so with us, that we will have our loving relationship with Krishna. We don't need to worry about it. All we need to do is engage in devotional service. Now, the purport to that verse that I read before, Srila Prabhupada makes a very nice statement. He said, the statements here that the Lord manifests himself before the devotee in the form in which the devotee likes to worship him indicates that the Lord becomes subordinate to the desire of the devotees. So much so that he manifests his particular form as the devotee demands. This demand of the devotee is satisfied by the Lord because he is pliable in terms of the transcendental loving service of the devotee. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 4:11. Ye tang mang prapajante tang stataiva bhajamyaham. We should note, however, that the Lord is never the order supplier of the devotee. Here in this verse, it is particularly mentioned. This indicates the efficiency ecstasy achieved through execution of mature devotional service, or prema, love of God. So if we engage in the loving service of Krishna in prema, on love of God, without any personal desire, without any tinge of material contamination, that service is so powerful that it invokes the Lord as a servant of the devotee. It puts the Lord as the nectar of devotion also. That Sri Krishna Karshani, that the Lord becomes the servant, he becomes obligated to the devotee. But the devotee isn't thinking that way. The devotee is thinking, I'm obligated to the Lord. His happiness is all I care about. And in that mood, the Lord becomes beholden to the devotee. So Prabhupada gave us the formula from the very beginning. He gave us the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. He gave us devotional service. And if we engage in devotional service and remove from our heart the anarthas, which come automatically by engaging in devotional service and practicing as Prabhupada asked us to, then we become fully aware of what our relationship with Krishna is. And Krishna reciprocates with us perfectly. So we don't have to worry about it. I was in Vrindavan, someone was telling me that they were chanting Ashtakali Alila, reading Ashtakali Alila every day because they knew that they had to practice, because they were going to go to the spiritual world and that was going to be the schedule and they needed to learn it before they went there. Otherwise, how would they know where to go at what time of day, right? No bells, what to do. But it's not, it's not like that. We become qualified automatically because Krishna in our heart reveals to us what we need to know, and he reciprocates with us as we need to have him reciprocate with us perfectly. And so that's what we have to look forward to. And the ticket, the entrance, is simply our desire to have it as manifest in our service to Guru and Krishna. So I'll stop there. There's no clock. The clock went away, but I'm looking at my watch and it says 10 to 9. Hare Krishna. Hare Parayana, the king of questions.
I have 2 questions. I don't know if you have time. You can choose what you want to answer.
It depends what the questions are.
So the first question has to do with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Ray's discussion, where Mahaprabhu clearly, I assume, is raising our understanding of the different rasas and what's superior. Mm-hmm. So maybe you can comment on that, contrasting with what you said today.
Well, there's a discussion of this by Rupa Goswami, and he clearly makes the point that all the manifestations of Krishna, all the incarnations of Krishna, all the rasas of Krishna are perfect for the person who's having them, and Krishna is complete in every single manifestation that he has. And by the way, he manifests in every species of life. You know how you go, sometimes you drive through a little town in Tennessee and it says, this is the birthplace of Elvis Presley or whatever. And they think it's really cool that Elvis Presley was born there or whatever. So every species gets to brag about some incarnation of Krishna. That, Krishna came as a tortoise, Krishna came as a fish. So that's perfect, but not, and they all have the potency to do everything, but they don't do everything. They just do what's necessary within the relationship. So Ramananda Roy and Sri Krishna, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they're discussing and they're going to the highest, and we hear the highest, but this highest is not materially higher. It's not the gold medal versus the silver medal. You win, you lose. Ha-ha, you lose. I came in first, you didn't. There's none of that element in this highest. That's why Prabhupada, he's very careful in his wording. Sometimes he says perfect, more perfect, most perfect. It's so, to one who's looking at it through the lexicon of the English language, it doesn't make any sense, but it makes sense because it's all perfect. And then there's most perfect and more perfect. So we're understanding those relationships. And in our Sampradaya, the Madhurya Rasa is very, very important. And it's certainly to be emulated. However, even if we only make it to be a cow in Vrindavan, or Rupa Goswami praying, blade of grass, right? Narottam, blade, just let me be, a servant of the servant. It's perfect. So it's perfect, more perfect, and most perfect.
The second question, are devotional practices...
Is that okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Maybe you also answered the second one, but I'll ask it. The devotional practices we have, chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, we have the deities Radha Sham or Krishna Balaram, Gaur Nitai. In Gaudiya Vaishnavism, our focus is on Krishna. It's drilled into us how Krishna is the origin, the source, everything. But when our Swarup might be that we have Dasya Bhav with Vishnu, like you're saying with Akrura. So how is it that the practices that are focused on Krishna can award us the Swarupa that has to do with Ram or,
Well, we see sometimes that happens. Look at Murari Gupta and Chaitanya Leela, perfect example. That even though he was worshipping Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and even though Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was encouraging him to worship Radha and Krishna, and he said, okay, I'll do it, but he couldn't do it. He was absorbed in Ram, and he couldn't do anything else. Actually, he was a manifestation of Hanuman, but he couldn't do anything else. That was his eternal relationship, and once he surrendered to that, Lord Chaitanya also surrendered to that in a way. He accepted that was his relationship. So it's just like Gopal Kumar. I think of that often. That he went through all these things to get to the spiritual world. He was in Dwarka, he was in Mathura, and then he was in Vrindavan, and he didn't know what he was going to find, but he knew when it wasn't what he found. If that makes sense. Does that make sense? So he kept searching, because even though he found God in many ways, he saw God in many ways, and he knew it was God. He knew it was the Supreme Lord, but he knew it wasn't his Supreme Lord. And so he was constantly driven by an internal guidance, and the devotees also. The devotees kept giving him direction also, because they could see, and they kept directing him until he was rightly situated. And so, no matter what we do, that's going to be the case. We can analyze it intellectually and try to understand how it works, but it doesn't work that way. It works on a different level. So we have to have confidence in knowing that we're going to be directed that way. Okay. No politics.
Am I politics? Huh? I don't.
No poli-sci.
Huh? I'm obnoxious, but I don't think I do politics.
I don't mean internal politics. I mean just looking at the world through the political eye.
Okay. I think this overlaps with Harpani's question and your answer, but sometimes, I guess this is a little political, but sometimes you hear, some of the Prabhus, talking about different manifestations of Krishna. This one's more esoteric, and that one's esoteric, but not quite as esoteric, and we're worshiping the most esoteric, and who are you worshiping? And it can sound like, to my conditional ears, like we're trading baseball cards, and we're wondering about which player has the best baseball average or something, So,
do you get a feeling of Kanishka in this discussion?
Oh, I would never say that, but I mean, some people might say that. But anyway, I'm joking around. But you mentioned, and it sounds like maybe a broader way to look at it is, Krishna's fully manifest in everything that he does. And it's at his discretion how much of that he wishes to manifest to interact with his devotees.
Yeah.
He can do anything he wants at any time.
Right.
There's no limit.
Yes.
I guess that would be. And is there some way to expand that? Like you can,
well,
a quotation or something?
There is a quotation. I don't know if I have it here, but there is a quotation, and Rupa Goswami talks about it in the Lagha Bhagavatamrita also. See, in order to enter into any rasa with Krishna, you first come to, what we call a Brahmabhuta stage, or the stage of, not having any material desire. You can't have any material desire to enter into any rasa. You can't have any material desire. So all this stuff that we bring from here, the better, the worse, the like it, I don't like it, esoteric, blah, blah, it's all imposed upon the reality by the glasses that we're using. And we need to take those glasses off. It's very, very difficult to take it off because we see everything in the world like that, and we're kind of forced to. We have to make decisions. We have to decide whether I should go here or there, or whether I should wear this or that, or whether I should associate with this person or that person, or what book I should read. So we're making decisions like that all the time. But in the ultimate issue, even in the Jaiva Dharma, you see that the sadhu is discussing the spiritual life or spiritual advancement with several different people. And as each person comes to their level of realization, then they kind of fall aside and he keeps going with the next person and the next person and the next person. But there's no judgment made. It's not like, okay, you graduated, now you can't get a PhD, you're stuck in with a master's, sorry. Eat your heart out. There's none of that up and downness. And when you put that up and downness into the equation, then you immediately prevent yourself from understanding the real absolute truth. So there's a lot of places in where that's discussed, because you have to come to that level where you see, it's described even in Bhagavad Gita, where you see stones and pebbles and gold as the same, where you see friends and enemies as the same, where you lose that positive and negative stuff. Yes, things are judged positive and negative in how much they take us to Krishna. That's the only positive and negative thing. Things that are negative take us away from Krishna. Things that are positive take us to Krishna. And that's the only positive and negative that we have in that stage. Trivikrama, the last one, because it's late. Are you looking up questions?
Art process interchangeable. Is there any information?
Interchangeable. What does that mean?
You're in a spiritual world and you're a gopi and you want to be a cowherd boy, or you're a cowherd boy and you want to become a gopi. Is there any information?
You have to go back there and find out. Let me know. Narayani, any insight into that? No. I mean, Radharani dresses as a cowherd boy sometimes, and Krishna dresses as a gopi sometimes. But they don't change their. And Lord Chaitanya, he took on the mood of Radharani, but I don't think that you change, because there's no. Unless it's for the pleasure of Krishna. Because there's one place in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita where Gopakumar is waiting outside the gates of Vaikuntha, and he's asked to wait there while gatekeepers go in to get him a pass so that he can go in, a gate pass. So he's waiting outside there, and he sees all the different devotees of Krishna. First he thinks a lot of them are Krishna, or Vishnu, and he tries to offer them respects, and they cover their ears and they say, no, I'm just, I'm not Vishnu. I look like him, but I'm not him. But then it's described that they take different forms, and he sees them like morphing it, into different forms, because in their exchange with Krishna, for his convenience or for his leela, they need to be in a different form in order to reciprocate with Krishna or to exchange with Krishna. So they just change their form as necessary for the exchange with the Supreme Lord. So that, for that purpose, anyone can do anything. But that's the purpose. The purpose isn't, well, I'm only a gopi, I really want to be a cowherd boy because, it's more fun to go out and play. That's not there.
Varuna Prabhu sent a text.
Who?
Varuna.
Oh, Varuna. How do you go, Varuna?
So thank you for class. We have certain relationship with Krishna, but are we able to appreciate others' relationships with Krishna?
Definitely able to appreciate others' relationship with Krishna. It's the lack of appreciation that's born of our material contamination. The fact that we can't appreciate. There's this transcendental envy, just like the gopis were envious of the flute. but still they really appreciate the fruits, the mercy that the flute is getting and being close to Krishna's mouth. They're not thinking, I'm going to take that flute and break it, you know. Who does he think he is? You know, I mean, there's a transcendental exchange of apparent jealousy, but on the other level, there's the highest appreciation for the fact that it got to that place that they so much want to be. And that's an indication of that spiritual level of advancement that removes the anartha of real envy, of material, and I shouldn't say real envy, of material envy that causes us to dislike one person, or to the point we want vengeance or some kind of vindictiveness because we're so angry that they have something that we don't have. And even, why are we here in the material world? Because we think about that way with Krishna, that he has something that we don't have. He has all those followers. What's he doing with all those followers? Why don't I have all those followers? Who does he think he is anyway, God or something? So because we have that attitude, that's why we're here. You know, that's it in a nutshell. Hare Krishna. So all glories to Prabhupada. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Serving samosas for breakfast.